part of the reason that I am as ironic as I am is because there's certainly a part of me that recognizes that, a lot of people, like as soon as you say the word philosophy, for a lot of people that's not accessible because they just they're not interested in it. They just don't have the capability to kind of understand a lot of stuff. And I think it's really annoying and strange when people take pride in the distance they can put between themselves and others, like intellectually. Like, oh, I'm very much into philosophy. It's like, okay, even to the average person who's not even that judgmental, it's just like, okay, well, okay, you're now in this ivory tower, sort of right off the bat, and it's like, I think obviously, I think philosophy is very valuable, and I spend most of my time philosophizing, I guess, engaged in that kind of thinking. But I think there's a responsibility that people who are capable of, kind of immersing themselves in these ideas to not think that makes them better than people, which I certainly used to think as a defense mechanism, in junior high, and the reason I don't have as many friends or that other people is because I'm smarter than these kids. I care about politics. I'm in 6th grade. I care about politics. These losers care about sports,
Yeah.
Which is what I actually, that was the mindset. And it's like,
yeah.
And so in part it's a attack on a part of me that I recognize as, foolish and insecure. But there also is an aspect of like, well, you also shouldn't feel you shouldn't feel ashamed for being interested in ideas. That's another problem that people have. It's like, well, I don't even want to bring up interesting things I'm interested in because other people will be like, oh, shut up, here you go, politics again, which certainly happened to me as well. So I don't know. I think you can strike a proper balance, I would say.
That's fair.
Yeah, and part of Seth and I's disagreement regarding philosophy, not that it's not interesting, and I think grounding your worldview or discussing kind of where your fundamental beliefs stem from is important. But when it comes to, like you were saying, Paul, solving problems or things like that, we end up somewhat just appealing to a common set of understandings anyway. And so when somebody says, well, I identify as this philosophical understanding and I identify as this, and they discuss the world, it does feel like sometimes it takes you away from the heart or the heart of the matter. Like, what's actually at stake here? What's the problem?
Yeah, I have a friend. This had to be, I don't know, high school or something like that. But he went to college for philosophy, and he would often talk about like this existentialism stuff. And I remember like listening to him thinking this is complete fucking bullshit. Like, anyone who has the time to sit here and go, what is the relationship between the conscious entity and the glass that sits before us? It's like, you are a fool because there are problems right in front of you all around the world, and you choose to spend your time wasting your time on a question like that. Now, in hindsight, I realize that those are, in some sense, the most important questions, because all other problems, well, not all other, but a lot of our problems stem from not having the right answers to those questions. But yeah, if you cannot, that's why I'm a big fan of pragmatism. If you cannot connect, if the truth of what you're saying does not change things in the real world with any practicality, it's totally irrelevant. Like the whole free will discourse in my mind is like, it's entirely semantic. It means whether to answer yes or to answer no changes nothing about society. Same with, do we live in a simulation? It's like, well, if we do, the rules of the simulation are still the same. The pain I feel, simulated or not, still sucks objectively. So it's like, so that's what I think.
Yeah, Seth. I mean, me connecting it to Seth and I's philosophy, I mean, it's really close to our theology, and I'm not going to dig too deep in it, but Paul from the Bible spent some time talking about how you can do exactly what we're talking about. You can get so confused on philosophies or I follow this person's theology, and then you miss the message of Jesus. So Paul, even biblical text, is reflective of this idea that you're talking about, Paul, of that we can spend so much time in this like headspace that we don't actually apply what is before us, which I think is the fear to avoid.
And in my defense of why I am more into philosophy than Josh, I guess, to put some defense up to it, is I've seen in my life, the more I've gotten into philosophy, where I did struggle all the time of kind of like getting like what Paul was talking about, like philosophizing about the stupid stuff that we don't really need to as much. But in the last year, it's really helped me find a motivation to really just push through hard circumstances, but also to want to push towards a goal where I can help people more in the future.
The other thing I would say is also depends on what you mean by philosophy, because it's like, first, like anytime you have a perspective, it's a like Mike Tyson has a philosophy on things, right? It's like Mike Tyson's not reading Nietzsche or whatever, something like that. So it's thinking deeply.
People up.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a philosophy of fists. But like thinking deeply about the world, we're not even thinking just thinking about your perspective. Like that's considered like philosophy, theology, all politics in some sense is philosophical.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's well, who should we vote for, Kamala or Biden? It's like, well, you're philosophizing about, well, what are their worldviews? What kind of world are they going to put in all this stuff? Or a philosophy of, just practical, like what's the best route to victory if I'm a Kamala Harris campaign manager? I have to have so that's the word philosophy is very broad, which is like, which is why, yeah, I don't tell people I'm into philosophy per se, because it's just like, I just think it means it's like, I think about that. I enjoy discussing complex topics, and I enjoy hearing where people come from and whatnot. And philosophy and psychology are also hand in hand. So
yeah.